Hi folks, hey, Roland Martin here. I want to give you 5 good tips that I guarantee will make you a better worm fisherman. You'll catch more and bigger fish with these tips. Starting off with an efficiency. You know, how about catching 9 out of 10 strikes? Do you think you can do that? Do you think you can get 10 worm strikes and catch 9 of the fish? Well, I can do that, and I do it all the time. That's kind of my average. When I do have the right rod, the right line, the right hook, and the right setup, I get 9 out of 10 fish. So efficiency is the first thing. Okay, let's talk about efficiency. Well, first thing we need is the right rod. We need a 6.5 foot medium heavy rod. That's my choice. 6.5 foot medium heavy or a 7 foot medium heavy. I use a favorite rod. It's my favorite, but it's actually the company's name favorite. And with that, I use a reel. This is the Johnny Morris Platinum Series reel. That's a good 8-to-1 reel, and it's a good solid drag. Now, here's one of the keys for efficiency. This is braided line. This is, in this case, 30-pound braided line. Now, you might say, why am I using braided line? Why don't I use monofilament? Well, first of all, braided is more sensitive. Second of all, braided doesn't stretch, and so I can set the hook far better. And so it's just more efficient, and it sinks faster and everything else. But there's one problem is a lot of people say, well, gosh, they're going to see the braided line. Yeah, okay, they see the braided line. There's 2 ways around that. There's 2 ways around the braided line. Number one, if you tie directly to the hook, take a black magic marker and color your line with a black marker. You can make it black, and we've tested the black. Black is the most invisible color to the fish. When you use 30-pound braid like that only has the diameter of 6 or 8 pound line, and you color it black, it's practically invisible. But you might want to go to a leader. Now, sometimes I'll go to a fluorocarbon leader. This is a 17-pound fluorocarbon leader that I have here, and I've tied a double uni knot. Now, I have done videos and showed you how to tie a double uni knot. That's a pretty good deal. But once I tie the double uni knot, I like to take super glue and just put a little dab of super glue on the knot. Boom, 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 just a little teeny bit, not much. Put it on the knot. And that adds a few more. It's still about 95% knot. It's a really good, strong knot. And that's, I think that's either 17 or 14, I don't know which. And I go to my worm. Okay, now here, my worm. I want to show you a couple things about the worm. Well, first of all, that was the tip. The fluorocarbon line is in the braid. Okay, that's all a big tip. That's efficiency tip. But let's talk about another form of efficiency, and it's the way you rig the worm itself. It's a completely different way. I want to show you a trick that's a super trick. Not many people know about this, but they will after this YouTube video. Okay, I'm going to use a bobber stop. Use the bobber stop on the fluorocarbon line. Use a slip weight. Okay, that's just a little 1/16 of an ounce slip weight. And right here, look at that. That is a swivel. You say, what in the world's a swivel doing here? Let me unhook this and I'll show you this swivel. This is a special deal. This is a trick in a trick. That's a swivel. Look at that. It's a swivel. And what the swivel does, look at this. When I hook it up, I come through the hook with the swivel right here. Watch what happens. I come through the hook right here like this. Okay, now we're talking about efficiency. Come out right here. Now the swivel gets on the hook bend, right on the bend, and holds it. It holds that worm on there. Now, why I do that is, okay, let's hook it right. It's all hooked. Now I take that slip weight and I slide the slip weight down. Okay, an efficient weedless worm. Okay, what am I talking about efficient weedless? Now just say I didn't have the bobber stop, and just say I'm throwing it in heavy cover, because here's the deal. Heavy cover in the form of logs and brush and logs and grass have big fish, and this is where you want to fish a worm. You want to fish the worm in heavy cover, and a lot of people don't fish it in heavy cover because they get hooked up all the time, because the hook the worm pulls down on the hook, they can't get it through the brush and through the cover the proper way because it's always pulling down on the hook and they're getting hung all the time. Well, this is an efficient way of keeping the worm on the hook and it won't get hung up near as bad. Okay, so now just say without the bobber stop. It comes up to a limb. It comes up like this, comes up like that, comes up here, up, and now all of a sudden the weight falls down. The worm's still up on the limb, but you feel the weight, and you don't realize that it's off the weight, that he's off the worm. Now, if you take the bobber stop, put down there, come up on that same little limb, you come up there like this, and you come up like this, keep shaking it over. It finally, it can't go anywhere but over the limb. So that's efficiency in itself. Okay, number two, that doesn't pull off. That swivel holds the head of the worm in place. Now there's a second way of doing this. You can, again, not use a swivel, and you can use super glue. And you can glue the head of the worm to the hook. And that's all right too. A lot of people do that. That's an old tried and true technique. I like the swivel better. I think the swivel is more efficient. The swivel can be used time and time again. The worm can last longer and not get torn up. And here's another thing about efficiency. When that worm gets all messed up, now I dipped the tail in a bunch of colors so it's a little screwy looking. Take it and turn it around. You can hook the worm backwards. Hook a Cinco backwards and it works well too. So you can save money by having this swivel, and you can also save money by using the worm backwards. You can catch twice as many fish. So now you can catch 3 or 4 times as many fish as you did before. And these Cincos cost like $1 a piece. So that's a big deal. Now let's talk about weights. Okay, what's the best weight to use for a plastic worm? Well, it's all according to how much wind is blowing. For example, in shallow water, if I'm fishing, say, 3 or 4 feet deep at Lake Okeechobee in the shallow weed lines, I'm not going to use hardly any weight. If there's no wind and the water's calm, I'm probably just going to use either no weight or this little 1/16 of an ounce weight like you see here. Now, what happens when the wind blows, say, 5 miles an hour? I might have to go up to 1/8 of an ounce weight. If it blows 10 miles an hour, I might have to go up to, say, 3/16 or 1/4. If the wind blows 15 miles an hour, I might have to go to 3/8 of an ounce. And say the wind blows 25 miles an hour. Go home. You can't worm fish at 25 miles an hour. It's just not going to work. Well, there is some ways, but it's just not efficient. It's not a good deal. So you want just enough weight to hold the bait to the bottom and have contact to the bottom where you can feel the bottom. And that gets me back to the way I hold the rod to start with. Now, if you hold the rod the proper direction, and that is high, from a 45 to a 90, you'll feel the bottom better. If you put the rod below 45 towards the fish, you don't feel as much, and they feel you more. So you've lost your efficiency of feeling the bottom. They feel you more than you feel the bottom. You hold it up from a 45 to a 90, and you feel the bottom, and the second they touch it, with this braided line, you feel that little tick, you give them some slack, they don't feel you. So that's important to hold your rod high for the sensitivity and for the fact that you don't want to let them feel you feel them. Okay, and you feel the bottom. Okay, we're talking about weights. Now there's another weight that's also good. And that's the screw-in weight. I don't have any with me because I like this little deal like I've showed you with the swivel. But they make weights of all sizes that have a little spring on them, and you put them on your line, and you screw them right into the head of the worm. And that works pretty good. That's not a bad way of doing it. Or you can use a toothpick. And you can actually take a toothpick and stick into the little hole and shove it in real good and break it off, and that kind of holds, pegs the weight as well. Well, the only problem is when you take it off, then you got a toothpick lodged in your weight. It's hard to get it out, and sometimes you have to throw the weight away. So, but anyway, you can either peg it or use a screw weight, and that works pretty well too. Now, 4th tip. This sounds a little crazy, and some people say, well, you're just doing that because you want to promote something. Well, no. I'll tell you what. way before I ever got involved with these people, I used this Spike It product. I used to dip the tails, and I used that wrong worm there. See, let me look at another worm right here. I have forever, I think it's so important, particularly when the water's a little dingy, is to use a tail dip. This is the most one. Sometimes it's the only thing that works. Sometimes I'll take a worm, dip the tail. Now it doesn't look like much. You're in the sunlight, you don't see that that's much in this light here because it's fluorescent light. But I'm telling you, that's a fluorescent tail. That's a chartreuse fluorescent tail right now. And in the sunlight, it would show up as such. Okay, so that's one color. They make all kind of colors. They make worm paint in an orange. They make worm paint in a white. They make a dip and glows in a red. They have every kind of color in the world. So that's, you know, they have pink, and well, I had some pink. I don't know what happened to my pink. I had a pink. Anyway, I have pink ones, and oh, here's a pink one. Hey, pink. Let me tell you, I've had a lot of success with pink. Pink's been a big deal for a lot of years for me. A pink-tailed worm, particularly in the spawning season. Okay, that's just something to think about. Now, there's also a luminescent. Where's my luminescent? But they make a luminescent spray. I don't have it with me. And what a luminescent does, it makes the worm in deeper water glow in the dark. Now, sometimes in deeper water, and the water's kind of dark and deep, and maybe late at night, or late in the evening, a glowing worm sometimes works well. And they make a luminescent worm dye that you can dip in, and it'll glow in the dark just to some degree, and that can sometimes be a big deal, particularly for night fishing. Okay, what's the last thing I want to talk about? The last thing I want to talk about, now that we know how to set the hook, now we know how to rig the hook, now we know how to color the hook, and get it all set up, is a good scent. Now, what do we need scents for? Well, for years, we used to take oil of anise. We'd buy it at the drugstore. And oil of anise does two things. It masks bad odor, like gasoline, like the human odors that maybe are offensive to fish, which they call pheromones. And it masks other things. And then secondly, it actually adds a good pheromone that they just like. They just like the taste and smell of the oil of anise. Not only does it mask the bad odors, but it adds an odor that they kind of like. And that's what they've done here with the Mega Strike. Yeah, okay, you say, well, he's just promoting that because it's one of his deals. It is one of my deals because I believe in it, but I was using this way before I ever made a deal with them. And the deal I have is hardly anything to it. It's just, but I do like it. This is really good. There's other products that work. There's other scents that work. There's spray oils of all sorts that have crawfish odors. They have oil of anise odors. They have shrimp odors. There's just a whole variety of odors that can be attractive to fish. But it's something that does work because it masks the bad odor and it adds an odor and a scent that they do like. So anyway, that's just one of the things I really appreciate working with you guys. Thanks again for subscribing to my channel. I'm an old school teacher at heart. I taught school years ago. I was in the military. I ran a rifle range and was a rifle range officer. That was really cool. So I'm used to doing how-to stuff. I can do how-to videos like I'm doing today, right and left, and I just enjoy it. I know how to fish better than I can fish myself. But I appreciate you subscribing, appreciate you watching, and we'll have another good how-to video for you soon. Thank you.